Hi, I'm Thomas Bowles, Prince William County Agricultural Extension Agent. Welcome to our video.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who don't know, tonight's presentation is being done by Jeff Zimmerman, one of our master gardeners who does a great deal of vegetable gardening, and he's going to talk to us tonight about starting plants inside and winter seed sowing. And so with that, Jeff, you want to go and take it away?
Sure. Yeah, like Thomas said, I'm Jeff Zimmerman. Been a master gardener. I was in the class of 2012. I have a very large vegetable garden. I know it's hard to get kind of excited about seed growing right now with the forecast ahead, but actually my first seeds go into the containers on I think it's the 15th of February. So we're not that many weeks away from when I start my garden already. To give a shout out to Linda and Nancy, I shamelessly borrowed their slides to do this, and I appreciate having that backbone. Okay, so what do you talk about with seed starting? You know, why would you want to start them? What would you start indoors versus planting outside? When do you plant your seeds? What do you plant them in? What kind of containers do you use to do that? Actual planting the seeds and a little on seed dormancy. Some on the different environmental factors that go into growing your seeds, care of the seedlings, and hardening off. So why would you want to start seeds? Well, for me, I typically have between 16 and 18 or so indeterminate tomato plants every year, of which there's probably 5 different varietals. And my garden's getting older. I get a lot of pests in it right now, diseases that I can't get rid of. So I can shop for a whole series of different types of tomatoes. I usually grow about 5 or 6 different varietals, and ones that are very disease resistant as well. So there's much more variety out on the web and out at seed merchants than you can ever get at our slowly shrinking retail stores within the area. It can save money. Sometimes I think I might spend more, but you can save money. There's some startup costs in terms of getting the lights going and so forth. It can increase your output. Typically, you kind of plant the same time that you would put your seedlings out. So if you do that, then you've already got a leg up. You've already started several weeks before you would actually your plants could mature to that level if you were direct sowing. It lessens the weather risks. Our weather's been all over the place. We've had so many weeks of cold, wet May weather that's been bad. I've had a lot of seeds just rot in the ground and never germinate. And when you plant indoors and put your plants outdoors, you get rid of that problem. And of course, the satisfaction of doing things, and it is educational. So let's look at a couple seed packets here. When you start, when you're going to start deciding whether or not you're going to plant indoors or outdoors, probably the best place to start is by flipping over the pack of seeds. And in this case, you can see I have tomato on the left side, one of my favorites, recommended to plant inside. A transplant recommended. Borage, another one of my favorites to grow near. If you haven't grown it before, it's about 2 to 3 feet high. Gets nice purple flowers. The leaves are edible, and I didn't realize this, but the seeds actually are omega-3 fatty acids. So you can also crush those and get some good oils out of them. But this one you want to transplant. You don't want to transplant. They recommend direct seeding, and the reason for that is that they develop a large taproot, and they're difficult to transplant outdoors. So 2 different packages, 2 different ways of growing them. Last year I put the borage out directly in the garden, and all my tomatoes were grown in my basement. As a general guideline, starting indoors, a lot of the plants that you start indoors are ones that you don't typically grow a huge number of. Broccoli, cauliflower, eggplant, Swiss chard, peppers. And a lot of the ones that you plant outdoors are more of the row kind of crops, pole beans, bush beans, peas, that kind of thing. Carrots, which grow along taproot, are hard to start indoors. I must admit, though, that I typically do grow cucumbers and squash, kale, okra, and beets actually in my basement for different reasons. So there are no really hard and fast rules to what you can start indoors and what you can direct plant in your garden. So I just took a couple of examples here. Beets, as I said. I have tried planting beets in the garden. I think I have the only garden in Northern Virginia that is actually always wet. It's wet and cold in the time when we would be planting the beets, and I have a terrible germination problem. Hardly any of them come up. So I started growing them indoors, and there are some little disclaimers within the instructions for those, and that they might not be as uniform as direct-seeded beets. However, I've had really, really good luck with them, and I do this every year. Start my beets indoors and then transplant them outdoors. Okra is another one. That's another one that they suggest growing outdoors. The problem I've had with okra is that once it comes up and it gets any amount of cold weather towards the end of May, I've had the plants actually just stunt. They won't grow any further. They stop. Okra likes to be warm. It likes warm roots. It just wouldn't grow anymore. So I've started doing that one indoors as well, and I will put those out around the beginning of June, when if I put the seeds out about that time, I would still have 4 to 6 weeks of growth time just to get to where my plants were. It does also come with a disclaimer: do not disturb the roots. So I'm just very careful when I put them in. It has tender roots, and I've never had any issues as long as I followed their instructions. All right, so we talked about what we can plant. Let's talk a little bit about when we want to start things. The last average frost date in our area is around the last week in April, someplace around there. It can vary. I did actually go back for the last 5 years, and we really haven't had many frosts after that date. But we had a lot of cold, wet weather, but not frosts after that date for quite a while now. But still, I've had trouble with planting things a little bit too early that require a little bit warmer environment. So on the seed packets, they'll tell you about when you want to start indoors. 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, 6 to 8 weeks before when you would put them out, before any chance of frost, etc. And let's take my favorite, the tomato. They recommend 5 to 6 weeks before the plants can be set out. If we decided that date was going to be the last average frost dates, we'd start our plants somewhere around the first week of March. I typically wait more than that. You can see at the bottom here, on May 9th, there's about a 10% chance in this area that we're going to have a frost afterwards. And we've had frost as late as May 21st. I hate having to cover any plants in my garden. It's not good for the plants, especially these warm weather ones, to experience that kind of weather anyways. So I typically push mine out a few weeks, and then would probably start these right around the beginning of April instead of the beginning of May. But it's up to you and what kind of risks. Everybody likes to have that first tomato in the neighborhood, so you can put them out earlier and take the risks. Lately, I have actually gone a little bit more towards erring on the side of being cautious, and because I've been bitten a couple of times. Okay, so if we know about when, the seed packet tells us what. We had the frost date. We can count back on when we want to start them. What media do we want to use? Well, there's so many inexpensive seed starting media out there. You really don't want to use garden soil, especially garden soil from your garden or garden soil from a bag. You don't really want to use potting soil. It's a little bit too coarse. You want to use a mix that's made for seed starting. You can make your own. I have done this with peat moss, perlite, vermiculite. If you do so, definitely wear a mask. It's quite messy, mixing everything up. And one thing I've been trying to do lately is use things that are a little bit more renewable. Peat moss is considered renewable, but it only grows about 1 millimeter a year. The peat, sphagnum moss grows faster, but the peat itself only grows about 1 millimeter a year. So it's really not that renewable. There are renewable options such as coir out on the market that uses it as a base, ground up coconut husks. So on the right is just kind of what a normal ingredients for one of these bags would look like. This one is mostly it's a bag of peat moss, some manure, perlite, and interesting enough, they actually listed on this it's fertilizer, that it has fertilizer in it, and that's actually derived from composted manure and crab shell meal and earthworm castings that are in it. You don't see that very often. It also has mycorrhizae, the fungi that forms a symbiotic relationship to the roots and helps feed nutrients and water into the plants. So there's a great number of different seed starters on the market. I've tried a couple side by side. I have to say I haven't really seen a huge difference in them, but typically I've gone for ones that are a little bit less expensive. And what should you grow them in? You got your media, you got your seeds, you know what you want to do. What's next? For me, since I plant a lot, I typically use an open flat with an insert in it, or these containers on the far right side, something along those lines, just because it's easier and quicker for me. I wash the open flats out every year. The inserts I typically don't. They're very cheap, and once you've done everything with them, they're kind of flimsy. They're typically cracked and not in the best of shape. But you can use almost anything. They have disposable pots. They have peat pots. You can use egg cartons as long as you can get some drainage out of them, poke little holes in the bottom so that the water can drain through. You have a number of different ways to do it. My way is typically just to use the insets. It's a lot easier for me. Growing a large number of different vegetables and flowers. If you are washing them, you need to wash in hot soapy water before you use them, and then maybe hit them with a mild bleach solution afterwards, like 1 part to 9. I just recently spent a good deal of time in the garage doing just that. That's where my big sink is. Then you can fill the containers with the seed mix. Planting depth is often 1 to 2 times the size of the seed, but you should really check the packet. Many seeds require light to germinate. Many don't. Many vegetables don't. You plant like half an inch deep or whatever they tell you to do. If you're doing them in a large container like the one on the bottom there, you can broadcast, put them in rows, whatever you want to do. It's just I find it a little bit harder in some of these larger ones when there's a lot of plants in there to get them separated well. But if you're growing a lot of different plants, this is a really good way to do it, a large number. Tiny bit on seed and dormancy. A lot of seeds need a little bit of extra help in order to germinate. Scarification, these seeds need to actually be physically altered, chipped or nicked, soaked in almost hot water or almost boiling water. They need to go through some type of freeze-thaw cycle. And you might consider winter sowing, which we're going to talk about in a little bit for that. Stratification, many perennial seeds require a chilling period in order to germinate. You don't want to do that inside the seed packet. You want to put it into your planting media and then chill it. You can put it outside for the cycle. You can put it in the refrigerator. And again, you might consider winter sowing, which is a more natural way to handle these type of seeds and what they would normally see if they're coming off the plants. Some require light. Those will tell you on the packages. Those need to be just spread along the surface. Some require darkness. And it's said they need to be planted a little bit deeper. There's a whole series of environmental factors that also play into seed growing. It's often said to moisten the seed mixtures before you put it in the containers. I can sometimes find this a little difficult. You have a bag of the seed starting material, you have to take it out or wet it in there and put it in. I often put it in earlier into my containers, water from the bottom, spray the top, and then let everything get wet that way rather than trying to get a wet media into all of the individual cells. I do find the spray bottles to be incredibly useful for spritzing the top, keeping it wet. Once you have planted your seeds, you can cover it. You can put this little dome on the right-hand side here. The media should remain moist without having to add any more water to it. If you do that, you can use plastic wrap. Be careful with the plastic wrap, though. I've done that before and had seeds grow into it. They don't really like that. Plastic pots or domes, whatever. Since I start a lot of plants, I typically don't cover them. But then you run into the difficulty that the top of the soil is always going to dry out first, and that has to stay moist during the germination process. So you really need to stay on top of things in terms of keeping the top of the soil nice and wet, bottom watering, and then using the spray bottle as well. Once they come up, you can allow more airflow, open it up. And I also like to have airflow in the room. I usually put a fan somewhere away from it, just enough to keep the air flowing and not enough to blow the plants over. That helps with diseases. It helps keep the air moving around and not stagnant. Sometimes with the fluorescent lights, things can actually get quite hot underneath them. So this also helps keep the air circulating within the room and helps you from drying out the plants too much from using your overhead lights. If your seeds dry out, they mostly will never ever recover. Once they get big enough to have the roots grow more towards the bottom, that's less of a problem than it is when they first start off. But also, watering too much can cause dampening off and other fungal problems. It's a really difficult line, at least for me, to try to walk in terms of those two things. Keeping everything nice and wet. You're watering usually from the bottom, or you should try to water from the bottom, and getting exactly the right amount of water in there is kind of a trial and error thing. Nowadays, I actually know about how much it should weigh with my hands. I pick it up and see that it's at the right level, but it can be very difficult to try to keep your plants right, especially if you're using fluorescent lights over the top. Those do get quite warm, and they tend to dry out things a little bit quicker. And on that same vein, the roots also must have oxygen as well as water. So you don't want to keep the soil absolutely drenched. The top does have to be nice and wet during germination for the seeds to germinate. But after that, you can allow it to dry out before you go and water it again. Typically, though, I found that pretty much every day I have to add some water to my seedlings. Avoid splashing water and so forth. The splashing can bring up disease. If you're using seeds that require light and you broadcast them across the top, you need to be careful that when you're spritzing it or whatever, you don't blow them away. I've had seeds come up in other containers within one that weren't the same thing, that weren't what I thought they were going to be. They were from the ones next to it. So it's really easy to blow them away as well. Seeds like to be warm when they're germinating. As I said, if you have some type of fluorescent light, that's typically not a problem. Like to be between 70 and 80. I mean, a lot of us keep our homes within that range to germinate. Once they're germinated, they want to be about 65 to 75. And again, that can be very difficult under fluorescent lights. If you keep the lights just a few inches above the plants, it can be extremely difficult. Fan in the room definitely helps with that. I have a shop where my seeds are grown in. I typically open up all the doors so that it has a bigger pool of air to flow through and to help keep it a little bit cooler, actually. You can use a window. However, typically they need a little bit more light than that to actually grow properly. The seedlings may grow a little bit leggy and bend towards the window quite a bit. The seedlings typically like to have light between 14 and 16 hours a day. It's nice to just put them on a timer and have everything go on and off, and you don't really have to worry about it. And care. So I typically put at least two seeds into everything that I start. The reason being that a lot of the germination rates are around 90%, and you want to make sure that you have every cell or every area that you're planting have a plant come up in it. So typically use two, and then at some point you need to thin back the crowd a little bit. You can either snip them with your fingers. I wouldn't try pulling them because that'll disturb the roots underneath when you pull it up. But you can use some type of a small scissors or whatever to cut them at the base. I've actually found this to be probably the best method for me, is to just take a pair of scissors and cut them down there at the bottom. If you're going to transplant into a larger pot, then you should probably try to pick it up by the leaves, not by the stems. And then once you do that, maybe keep it out of the direct light for a little bit. If it recovers and looks great, then you don't have to worry about it. If not, give it a little bit of time to bounce back. And hardening off. This is a fairly crucial part of seed growing. If you take your plants and put them out immediately, they will get sun scalded. They need to go out into some area that has some type of a shade. I have shade cloths that I put over the top of it outside that allow, I think it's about 30% of the sunlight in, and I have other ones that get about 60. I'll just move them around outside underneath these different cloths so that they slowly get a little bit more sunshine until they get to the point after about 5 days to a week where I can just put them directly in the garden and not have to worry about sunny days scalding them. It can be kind of hard to do this if you have a lot of plants. And warning, don't put them outside if you think it's going to rain that day without a cover over the top of them. But the plants usually don't survive. Everything floats away. And obviously I have had personal experience doing that. So anyways, that's kind of planting seedlings in a nutshell. I really didn't cover flowers and so forth as much. I do plant a lot of flowers as well. They're a big part of starting seeds inside. Again, it's the seed packet which tells you mostly everything that you need to know about whether you can start it inside or not. I do close to 100 zinnias every year. All of those I start indoors. Like I said, the borage last year I started outside. I have some marigolds that I start inside and kind of plant around the garden, those type of things. So you would follow exactly the same methodology when you're doing flowers or flowering plants as you would if you were doing vegetables. And now on to winter sowing. I do love winter sowing. I love the USDA definition of it. It's very precise. But really, I guess in my mind, it's just really growing seeds as they would fairly naturally if they fell off of the plant outside and fell into your garden. It's a nice, easy way to do this. It doesn't require a lot of work. Doesn't require expensive grow lights. So it's inexpensive, environmentally friendly. There's no really hard and fast rules. There is a set of instructions that I'll go through, which are really easy. But overall, you can almost just put anything into a container outside, make sure that it doesn't get too much water, and things will grow. You do need to protect the seeds. It is really, really great for things that need natural stratification. I've had some seeds that I've tried to grow indoors. I've chilled them in refrigerators and so forth, and just haven't gotten any germination rate off of them. However, when I take those same ones and I try winter sowing, I have much, much better luck with getting a high germination rate. You don't have to harden things off. They've already been outside. Reduces the need for watering, and it is kind of fun. So what can we do? Well, there's a lot of different flowers and vegetables and so forth that you can try with winter sowing. Perennial flowers are great. These seeds would sit in our garden anyways over the winter before they would sprout, so they're ready-made for winter gardening. Milkweed, black-eyed Susans, dianthus, Shasta daisies. You can do cool season annuals, start those in the fall or winter, pansies, nasturtiums. Cool season vegetables, maybe a little bit later in the winter, broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower, lettuce, those kind of things. And warm season vegetables can be started in April, such as tomatoes, peppers, zucchinis, cucumbers. The system works really well. If you would plant a garden, and like I do with lots of tomatoes, I have tons of tomatoes that come up out of the ground every year. So that the seeds make it through, they survive, and then they germinate as they would normally do if they were coming from a plant. And also just a whole series of herbs that can also be grown in a similar way. So there are 10 steps. They're really very, very easy steps to creating a container for winter sowing. Collecting, getting the jugs together, making sure there are holes, labels, and so forth. I'm going to go through these fairly much one by one. I've kind of lumped them in together into single slides. But step 1 through 3 for containers, I've been using milk jugs. Been harder to come by lately, things that actually come in the gallon milk jugs like this. But you can use any kind of thing, plastic bottles or plastic containers of any type, yogurt cups, all kinds of different things. You just don't want large holes in the bottom. You want a standard size drainage hole. And then you can poke holes in the bottom. I usually just use a drill and just drill holes in really quick so it goes through quite easily and doesn't crack everything. If you're using a water jug, you want to cut it with about 4 inches up from the bottom, and then you can leave it so there's a little flap on it, so it's all still one piece. If you're doing any of the other containers, you just need to make sure you poke holes in the top as well, because the milk jugs already have the hole at the top. And also make sure you have the holes in the bottom, just like you would for any kind of container for container gardening. You need to make labels. And I didn't realize until afterwards when I looked at this. I'm not sure where I got the image from, but they did spell asparagus wrong. You need to use some type of a marker that's going to stay on if it's outside in rainy environments and so forth. Sharpies, China markers, grease pencils, and so forth that will stay on there through the course of the winter so that you know what your individual ones are. I only do a few, and I would definitely be able to tell from what the plants coming up were, but it's always a good idea, no matter what, to put labels on it. You can also relabel it in the inside too if you want to, using popsicle sticks or plastic garden markers. Those are really great. You want to put about 3 to 4 inches of soil in the bottom, about as much as what you cut off if you're using a jug. And then kind of tap it around, get it to settle down, and then water it thoroughly all the way through so that water comes out through the bottom holes. Then you want to plant the seeds. You want to plant only one type of seed generally at a time in each one of the containers so things don't get all mixed up. Tiny seeds you can mix up with some sand, vermiculite, other things, and sprinkle on the top. Follow the instructions on the packet if you're planting them from a packet outside. I started all mine this year from seeds that I collected from the garden. So I just got online and looked up planting instructions from where I could find it, what planting depths and so forth they wanted for my plants, my seeds. And then you tape it in place. You just use duct tape or whatever. If it doesn't form a seal, if you're using just a regular container, you just snap the top on it. And then you want to put them in an area where, dogs and it says clumsy spouses, of which that would be me, don't bump into them and knock things over. Someplace somewhat protected, part sun, part shade. You want to monitor the dampness some. Make sure you add a little bit of water if it needs to have any in it. They are kind of a mini greenhouse, and you can see on these where you're getting some sweating on the inside, and some of that moisture will find its way up and out of the top. So keep an eye on them. Make sure that they have the right amount of water in them. After you start seeing leaves forming, you want to open them up for a little bit, and maybe move them to the shade where the temperatures aren't so warm if it's really hot that day. If you have an unexpected cold spell, we have one of these late freezes or whatever, you could always retape them and cover them up. If you're really afraid, you can just cart them into the garage for the night. And then transplanting them. This is the only part that I actually find difficult about this, is trying to separate the roots and get everybody out that I need to get out of there if I have multiple plants in there. You want to open the containers for, a couple of days before you transplant them outside, kind of let them acclimate to everything, and then pull them apart very gently and plant them. Water like you would anything else, and then just enjoy the work that you've done. So I don't know if it's interesting or not, but these are the ones that I did this year. These were all from my garden. These were all things that actually have been called out as needing stratification of some type to get a high germination rate. We've got butterfly weed, rose campion, ironweed, and some columbines. All easy seeds to collect, and I'll probably get a lot of plants underneath each of these where they were, but I want some in other areas. So just putting these outside and leaving them for the winter is a nice, easy way for me to propagate my garden at almost no cost. Well, that's it for me. I said that I probably get through this fairly quickly. I'm an extremely fast talker. Put in a little advertisement for the Horticultural Help Desk. If you have problems, give us a call. You can either call us, you can email us, you can go to the website, MGPW, which has links to it. It's staffed during the weekdays. And if you would please take a picture of this with your phone and fill out the questionnaire to help us generate a better meeting. And I hope you learned something. And are there any questions?
I have one. Can you discuss the differences by the different types of grow lights? I know some are fluorescent, there's all kinds of stuff on the market. And from what I learned, you need a combination of red spectrum and blue spectrum.
Yeah, it gets confusing. There are a number of them on the market. When I looked into doing, where are my lights? When I went and looked into doing it, I actually chose just fluorescent lights, and it was mostly because of cost. In order to have, I really need let's see, how big is mine? It's 2 by 4 feet, which a lot of these fluorescent grow lights come in. In order to do the LEDs for that required a lot more, because I have 4 different racks that I grow off of. So
yeah,
most of those come in like 2 by 2s, and it was a lot of money. So when I upgraded, I actually went to the fluorescent light. They may not be the best. Some of the newer ones actually do have are more targeted towards the correct light spectrum. And they've gotten extremely, I'm going to say, they've gotten extremely targeted. A friend of ours was growing a lot of stuff in their basement with specialty lights and had extremely good luck with them. I've had good luck with my fluorescent ones. And again, the reason I didn't go with LEDs and do more with trying to get things that were more targeted for with just that the wavelengths that the plants absorb at was just strictly cost.
Yeah.
I think things are getting cheaper now, though.
I think when plants are bigger, you need the redder colors for blooming and inducing flowering, and you're not doing that here.
No. Yeah, my one friend who grows a lot, grows some, is growing things that have just actually become legal in the state to grow.
Yeah.
And those are big, tall plants. And
Right.
that's what they grow underneath them. I hadn't seen that before, but that is true. When the plants get much bigger, they require a much more bigger light source. 4 weeks that mine are underneath here, 4 to 6 weeks, they do quite well. They can get a little leggy sometimes if I keep them inside a little bit too long, but I start my entire garden from seed now. A couple of reasons for that. I had gotten some, Brussels sprouts that I brought in, which brought in whiteflies, which infested my garden. So I decided I wasn't going to bring anything from nurseries into my garden anymore. And I can generally find anything I want online. There's so many great seed carriers out there. And for
There are. Jeff, Jan wants you to go back to the QR code.
Oh, I'm sorry. There we go.
I'll do it too.
I'm sorry I talk so quickly. I always do.
Oh, that was so interesting. I actually learned a lot because I haven't started my seeds yet this year, and I usually buy the 6-pack. I have a smaller raised bed compared to your property, your gardens, and so I'll only need 6 or so tomato plants. Can you explain to me the difference? It didn't work out for me between the determinate and the indeterminate types of tomatoes, because I know the difference, but they all get so leggy even outside.
Yeah, they
And
can. I mean, the indeterminates definitely get leggy. I've got 6-foot tall cages for mine that I grow them in. I'm often staking those up and pruning as well. Some of the ones that just when it gets too big, and they'll just keep growing until frost kills them. And they also keep blooming that entire time. That's why I typically grow those. I take a lot of our tomatoes and then I vacuum seal them, and then we use them in soups and things all winter long. The terminate or supposedly don't need staking. Well, I think a lot of them do. They don't get as large, bloom all at once, and you kind of get one crop off at a time. It's probably a lot nicer for like commercial growing, where you can go through and pick, and you don't have this incredibly long season where you have to have somebody out there picking continuously. I have just gotten kind of stuck on the indeterminate variety. There's somebody on Purcell who used to every year grow a determinate type. They never staked them, and they had a gigantic field of them. I'm not sure what they did with all the tomatoes, but it was always so impressive to see it every year.
well, yeah, the Balkir Education Farm also has really interesting tomato crops, growing strategies.
Mm.
Let me see. And do you prune them heavily? I know that's probably a topic of another one of the classes here, but
I typically do not. If things get a little bit out of hand, I will. I typically end up tying them off to the cage as it grows up. I started growing them in larger cages because I had such a bad problem with the squirrels. And when I used a 2x4-inch mesh on my cages, they can't get the big tomatoes out. So they can't grab 10 of them and go put them on my fence and eat 2 bites. They're stuck in there. So I haven't had the problems that I had before with the squirrels. Just by doing that. They just can't steal the bigger ones as readily.
Annoying squirrels.
Yeah, something happened in my yard. They're gone. And we usually buy my bird feeder at any particular moment, there would be 5 or 6 squirrels underneath it. All of a sudden, I'd say in the last 3 months, I haven't seen a squirrel in my yard.
The birds aren't there either.
Well, we get a lot of stray cats that I could pick up, and we have a number of fox that I pick up on my ring in the backyard as well. They're probably drawn by the smell of our fowl in the cage out back, but that's my only thought. We have a huge oak tree on the side of our yard, which is usually just an incredible amount of activity this time of year with them gathering up the acorns. I haven't seen one. I'm wondering if anybody else has seen anything like that.
Well, I haven't seen the red-shouldered hawk or the Cooper hawk in the area, but my daughter-in-law, who's also here too, we live next to each other. We have really seen substantial decline in our birds and also our squirrels. I maybe only have 1 or 2 squirrels right now, and we've seen the hawks pick them up, but I haven't seen many hawks in the last month.
Yeah, I've taken a couple of pictures of the red-shouldered hawks hovering around my backyard.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just a combination of everything. It's just very strange not to see any squirrels.
But it was a year for oak trees and everything. When I go for walks in the woods, it's like skating on marbles. My neighbors have noticed similar things. I still have squirrels in my backyard, but some neighbors said they haven't seen them, but I wondered if they have so much food, they don't need to come and pester. I really don't know, because I don't think anybody's poisoning them or anything.
No, yeah, I agree with the acorns. I actually kind of use them as mulch in one of my beds on the side by the tree. Keep the erosion down. I just rake them all into there.
If you enjoyed this video, please let us know with your questions, comments, and suggestions for other classes. For more information on lawns and gardens, contact the Extension Horticulture Help Desk at mastergardener@pwcgov.org. Thank you, and we hope to see you next time.